Hi to you all. Apologies that I cannot be there in person, but I'm really glad that I can take part in some way, doing this via pre-recorded video. My name is Emer O'Neill and I am an equality activist. I'm a children's book author and I am also a broadcaster on RTE. I'm a qualified physical education teacher with a master's in educational leadership and administration, and I have a huge passion and love for sport, and in particular girls and women in sport and keeping girls in sport. I played basketball for Ireland and I got a scholarship to the United States. And I spent 10 years in the States where I was a teacher at a middle school and a college basketball coach before returning to Ireland and starting my career here. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to the rest of the day. I think when talking about the workplace, it's important to talk about the word privilege. And when we speak about privilege in terms of equality and ethnic diversity, we're talking about a privilege that's nothing to do with your socioeconomic status or your education or anything like that. It's about how you're envisaged when you're first greeted or seen. For example, even just a CV going into a workplace. So when your CV goes to an office, you've applied for a position, and the employer is reading your CV, the first thing they read is your name. In a lot of circumstances with people of different ethnic minority groups, our names are not generally traditional names to the country that potentially we are living in or we are from. And this can have a detrimental effect on even getting a foot in the door to even get an interview in the first place. And I have seen this happen to many of my friends. My name, Emer O'Neill, is extremely Irish, so I've never suffered from this, but I have experienced it in the other sense that when I have arrived for an interview, that I definitely got the sense that people were very shocked to see the person that I was, when looking at the name, not putting two and two together, that Emer O'Neill would come and be, Black and Irish. And that has affected me in negative ways in the past. I remember an interview that I went for a PE teaching job, and the lady on the panel that was interviewing me asked me, she told me that basically a part of the interview was to be Oscailga, was to be in Irish, but obviously I wouldn't understand Irish, or I don't speak Irish, so they would skip that part. Now, I do speak Irish. I was born and raised here in Ireland, so I have the same level of Irish as the most standard Irish people do. And I found it really put me on my back foot. It made me take a second breath, and it made me even more nervous than I was before at the beginning. But in that moment, I was stereotyped. That panelist's unconscious bias came to the forefront. So in her mind, a person with black or brown skin could not possibly be Irish, and also would not have a grasp of the Irish language. Now, what I see with my friends, the difference is that a lot of them are not even getting the opportunity for jobs because of their name. And I have a friend in particular that changed her last name to her husband's Irish last name because she realized she wasn't getting interviews, and she wanted to see, did it have any correlation with the fact that her last name was Kenyan. And when she changed her name and applied to many of the same positions, she was called for interviews for those positions, showing that even in a name can have such a hindrance on even getting a foot in the door in terms of getting even an interview for a position, that you're contending against not only your skill set, but even just being acknowledged and not having your CV thrown out. also even education, and in terms of universities that you've gone to, when it states, that a university is outside of Ireland, it can also hinder your advancement in certain roles or in positions. Some companies have taken on blind screening, which is something that I would really recommend for companies that are invested in inclusivity, in diversity, and equality. In blind screening, an employer is given only the content that they need in terms of the skill set of the individual. So no names, no gender, no ethnicity. There's no defining characteristics for people's unconscious bias to play a role in the selection process for jobs. And I think this is really crucial, and it is really needed in many forms in different occupations and job potentials, in order for the playing field to be equal, and to ensure that everyone has equal opportunity, no matter where their education is from or where their name is from. I think for many to really and truly understand the challenges that are faced when you are coming from an ethnic minority group in a workplace, it's important to consider intersectionality. And that is the intersection of different minority groups. So whether it be being from a minority group based on your class, based on your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your religion, or your race, we all have a lot in common. And that intersectionality is a very important aspect for employers and employees to understand. At times, people can find it difficult to relate to other people, right? If you're not from an ethnic minority group, you might think, how am I to understand what a day in the life of is like, or what are things that we can potentially do to help. And the way I try and help people look at this is by looking at the intersectionality aspect of it, that generally all of those minority groups will experience the same types of traumas, whether it be, being left out, being made fun of, not feeling good enough, some aspect of discrimination or hate. And it is through that understanding of intersectionality that we can in turn feel empathy for others without having to be from their minority group, and also be in a position to help people on their journey. We find a lot of the times that workplace social gatherings or events or projects or anything that's going on within office and office spaces is generally specifically directed towards white people. And so you'll find that a lot of people from ethnic minority groups do not they don't find these things accessible, or that they're directed to them. And so again, there is a link missed in that connectivity within a company and their employees. So I think it's really important that there's always a representative from certain groups at the table. One thing that I find in terms of the workplace is that decisions are made in terms of diversity and integration by people sitting around a table that have absolutely no experience with what it means to need inclusivity, equality, and diversity. I think that is one thing that is constantly overlooked, and it's something that's very, very important, that as employers and companies, that is something that they ensure that people from minority groups, and specifically speaking here about ethnic minority groups, that they have a place at the table in the decision making that are surrounding things that involve them. I think it's a no-brainer, but it's something that is overlooked a lot of the time in so many aspects of being. And we, I'm a Black and Irish woman. I'm a woman. I'm also a part of a minority community because I am a woman. So gender-wise, the same battles that we see being faced in terms of gender are very similar battles being faced in terms of ethnicity and the lack of diversity, and those gaps in terms of trying to bridge the deficit or the gap in gender equality. It's the same idea in terms of trying to bridge that gap in terms of diversity, equality, and inclusion. And there is no sense in reinventing the wheel. The same tactics that are used in companies to ensure equality in terms of gender, those same tools can be used, that same work ethic and aspects in terms of inclusion for gender can be used in terms of ethnic minority diversity in the workplace also.